Okay. I want to thank everyone for joining. For those of you who do not know me, I'm Andre Green, co-chair with Dina Manka for the Process Project and Knowledge Management Group.
You know what it was.
I want to ask everyone to please mute your phones. You hear a little
Uncle, can you help us mute some
background
of
noise. All right, thank you. And I want to thank you for joining for such a timely conversation today about the future of work, a topic which is pretty personal, I would think, to all of us. I think everyone has a definite feeling or a position on whether or not you'd like to work from home or work in the office and what your company has decided for you. So we'd like to talk today just about what that looks like. This is meant to be a collaborative discussion. As you guys know, many of the presentations or that we've done, we've had different speakers to come in and talk to us on different topics. This one is intended to really be collaborative. A lot like a focus group, where we have a set of questions that we've put together, which are basically to sort of guide the conversation, but not necessarily box us in to any topic. And what we're really interested in learning is from you, what each of your companies are doing, so that we can all learn from each other, just where we're going with the future of work based on those different experiences. Throughout the session, you can either jump in if you have an idea or a thought on any question, or put information into the chat. We'll be monitoring the chat to see just what comments people have. I'm just going to stop right there first to see if there are any questions. All right, well, we'll kick off with a couple of polling questions. This is really to get a sense of where your companies are in this process. Can we do the first polling question? And that question is, what is your company's stance on back to office plans? Will you be in the office full-time remote, or will there be some hybrid type of arrangement? So go ahead and respond to that. We just get a sense of just where the group is.
We're talking about just the legal department, right? Not the whole enterprise.
And that's a good question. Why don't we say just because this is really legal, let's just talk about legal, because that's what our group really covers. And that may be different from the enterprise.
I think Andre Heather brings up a really good point, because
it is a good point.
I think we should discuss that as well, because even, in my personal experiences, we are seeing some contradictions between the enterprise message and what we're seeing in other functions within the enterprise, and then legal as well. So I agree. Let's answer the question's perspective from legal, but let's talk about it. And I want to hear from the audience on where we're seeing a bit of a different approach or different philosophy within the same enterprise and various functions, and what are the sentiments around that as well.
Spoiler alert, I'll use the word polar opposite.
Polar opposite. I like it. Did we see the
kind of wrong, Heather, though?
Yeah, so did we see the results of that question? Hybrid, 91%. 5% full-time office, 5% full-time remote. I knew that hybrid would probably be the largest. Just I expected a bigger percentage in one of the others. And there was a follow-up question, which I thought of in hindsight, because I anticipated a hybrid would be, but to what degree are people hybrid? Like, is it 1 day, 2 day, 4 days, 3 days? But why don't we, before we answer that, put it in the chat. How many days we don't have the polling question for that one, so we really will need you to use the chat on this. But to the degree that you're hybrid, how many days will you be remote or in the office? Either way. In the office, remote. That's what we're going to ask. Okay, it looks like we're getting somewhere 2 to 3. Saw 3 to 5.
I like Mike Stein's answer. 3 to 5 days per month. That's the second time I've heard a mention of a hybrid schedule where it's at the month, not the week.
Yeah.
So Mike,
Yeah,
talk to us about that.
so I mean, and that's the thing. And I think you all have alluded to this, is that every leader has the discretion to kind of decide what the departments do. And, it's really hard. I also play the role of chief of staff, and it's hard for us to justify that folks need to be in the office after being home for 2 years, right? And, it just makes sense. We can do stuff when we're in the office. We're going to have folks in for mandatory trainings and things like that, but we're not going to arbitrarily say that folks have to be in the office a couple days a week. So we measure by months, not weeks.
So it sounds like you have more of a purposeful approach to it, which I have heard is, Google's adapted that mentality where they're not being strict about the number of days, but they're trying to make sure that the experiences are very meaningful or purposeful when they are in the office.
Yeah, for Chick-fil-A, they developed culture cornerstones to ensure that we keep our culture going. And it was always pre-COVID, it was always in the office. But an example of a cornerstone would be for in-person would be like our all staff events. We have Founders Day where we celebrate, Truett Cathy and his legacy. We have in-restaurant days where we serve operators, mid-year performance reviews and performance reviews, things like that. They've given like 4 culture cornerstones, and they've mentioned 8 to 10 days average per month. So, whatever that would, they said, don't take out a calculator, try to figure that out. But, we do have staff that support our operators in the field. So that is considered more of an in-person. It's not an office. It's, are you face-to-face with someone? And like I like to call it 3D, and supporting them. And then the other cornerstones are around like innovation sessions. So like if we're trying to innovate and create a new process, obviously that energy, if you've ever been in an innovation session or just in a working session where you're feeding off each other's energy, that is one of the recommended cornerstones as well, to try to do that live and in person.
And these culture cornerstones, Stephanie, are they embedding them into leadership behaviors, trying to do some things that are specific to try to hold leaders accountable or managers accountable to not overstepping that bound or not understepping it?
Question. I'm not a people leader, so I don't have insight into that. I can tell you that it's not my knowledge. It's not being tracked. So, Chick-fil-A is not a demand culture like that. What you would experience is like people want to be back in the office. This should be where we want to go to work. But if I need heads down project time or white space time, I should, be able to spend that at home or even in a huddle room at work. But I think I would suspect the education they're giving people leaders is just, model our corporate purpose, model these 4 cornerstones. And I suspect that they have some resources to help them if they feel like that's not happening. But I think this has been since mid-February, so it's been a little bit less than a month. And I mean, people were like, can we please come back to the office? And so now it's just that energy of being back in the office and having that flexibility to know that we can still support the operators and team members, from anywhere, to people's point, but it might be easier if we need a brainstorming session, if we do it, as we're, live together in a room. So hope that as much as I can answer the question, not having the insight to how the people leaders are doing it.
Thanks, Stephanie.
Okay, I just want to do the second polling question, and that's the only other polling question that we have, and then we'll just follow the flow of conversation after that, because I'm just kind of curious where people are sort of in that process. Are you currently back in the office? And generally, this just means that as far as any plans that they've had, to go from full-time remote, which I believe we all were, either to back into the office or some mix, or even if it's full-time remote, just that those plans have been executed. So where are you in that process? Are you already back in the office? Are you in the process of doing that now? Will you go back later this year or maybe next year, or you're just going full-time remote? And it's kind of to get a sense of what you are experiencing now, or at least anticipate. And there are, just sort of the changes in culture, different things. There are a lot of different impacts. We're just kind of curious where you are in that process. Okay, we'll give you just about 15 more seconds to respond. Okay, can we see those results? Okay, so 35% are back in the office, 42% are in the process, 15% is going back later this year, and 8% is going full-time remote. Okay, interesting. So for the people who are in the, what I'm curious about in terms of going back to the office, what does that transition, or what did that look like? Did everyone come back on the same day, or how was it communicated? Were you staggered in terms of coming back into the office? Just what does that transition plan either look like or will look like based on what's been communicated to you?
I can answer for those. We came back in 7 waves. We're currently in wave 3. Wave 4 and 5 show up in about 2 weeks. And so all the attorneys are back and most of the paralegals are back. So we're just kind of working our way through the support staff at this point. And we will be full-time in the office. Not our whole
office. Yeah.
Our whole company will not be full-time in the office, but legal will be full-time in the office.
But legal will be. How did you define the phases? What makes a phase?
I don't know who made the waves. I disagreed with bringing the executives back months before bringing the administrative staff back because I thought that was kind of silly, but no one listened to me. So the people that are paid to touch paper are still remote, and their bosses are back in the office trying to figure out how to send a FedEx without assistance.
Okay.
But somebody did it by job grades. They were trying to get the vice presidents and directors back in the building, and the attorneys fit in that bucket. So that's the short
How
answer.
large is your legal department?
In the US, about 100 people.
About 100 people. Yeah, so in terms of, one question I have is just a follow-up question. It has a lot to do with communication, the presence of leadership, the values that are communicated, the rationale. What is the rationale that has been communicated for being back in the office full-time?
If you're comfortable with sharing with us.
If you're comfortable with sharing. I'm sorry, that's very direct.
That's a really interesting question. And I know some law departments are full remote, and I've never worked with that. I think it might be a generational thing of how old your GC is and what your GC's personal biases are. But, they just want, this company, the entire law department sits on one floor in one building. We were not spread out across the country in multiple offices. And that was the the culture and the whole kind of how we worked. We're literally on one floor of one building. And I think they are very comfortable with that and kind of want to get back to that.
Yeah, and I apologize. Thank you, Dina, for saying if you want to be comfortable
Well,
with it.
it's okay. I only say that because I'm going to press Heather with another tough question from that. So she decided to feel comfortable with it. And we do definitely want to hear from a lot of the rest of the folks on the call. But
Sure.
Heather, I know it's probably a little bit too early to tell, but do you feel like there will be a cultural impact as a result of this? Do you feel like you guys might see an increase in attrition, might see any, struggles in attracting top talent as a result? Do you, in your heart, do you feel like you will see an after effect on this? Or do you really believe that this will just return to what it was before without really any
So,
impact?
interesting question. There has been a little bit of attrition. Some of that attrition was going to happen anyway. There's always some disgruntled people. But we are 30 miles, 25 miles outside of a medium-sized city. So like one person was, when I first got here, was complaining about how miserable their job was. And I said, well, why don't you go look for another job? But like, it's a company town. Like, where would I go? How many Fortune 50 companies do you find in Mooresville, North Carolina? One. So there's a big barrier of joining and coming. If we were in a major city, if we were in Chicago or Boston or New York, I bet you we would have a lot of attrition on this thing. But we are, like I said, 30 miles outside of Charlotte. It's not the same job pool.
Good point. Interesting.
And Heather,
Anyone else?
just out of curiosity, do you think that your law department experienced any kind of reduction in effectiveness or productivity during the period when you were working remotely?
Good question. I don't know that we lost productivity. We are on a, I think we kept the business going. But as far as innovation and what, I'm sorry, I forgot your name, but the lady, it's just Stephanie from Chick-fil-A was talking about like that, when you're trying to come up with stuff and new ideas and stuff, it really helps when you're live and in person and in the room. So I think, we've kept the business going for 2 years, but have we continued to move it forward? Maybe not as fast as if we had all been here.
Good answer. Thank you.
But I'd like to keep my job. So I'm going to stop opining about the decisions that my leaders have made.
My advice of counsel.
On advice of counsel, I'm shutting up now. You guys can talk.
Fair enough.
So I want to hear from, looking at the chats that people are sharing. And again, if people aren't comfortable with this, and Andrea, I know you want to, because I think we're going to get to the meat of the topics, which are about how legal work is changing and what kind of, we're going to solicit topics for you guys for.
Correct.
So those are there. But I do want to hear from some other ones, and I think others would benefit from as well. So is it Krista Grost from 3M? You are on the opposite, like complete polar opposite of Stephanie. And just, to the same question that Andrea asked, the philosophy, the justification, just as there were for returning to the office, had to then also communicated to you in the office as well. What can you share about that? What were some of the messages you heard?
Yeah, I think, we've always had a flexibility program at 3M. I would say not very widely utilized. I think majority of folks came into the office every single day, unless there was some emergency in which you had to work remote. But during, I would say over the last year, they've been working on communications around when we return to the office, it won't look the same. So kind of laying that foundation, and they branded it under Work Your Way. And that's kind of the tagline. So do what's, you do you, what's required for you, given your job responsibilities, ensuring you have alignment with your supervisor. But I think acknowledging and recognizing we've been very successful working the last 2 years remote, that you have that choice, and you can change your mind. You can say, today I want to be 100% remote, and I select remote, but in a month from now, I could go, gosh, this isn't working out. I want to go into the office 2 days a week. I can make that change. There's nothing preventing me from doing that. So very much doing what's right for the individual. I think there's been a lot of recognition and discussion around, as a way to attract and retain talent. 3M is, in some of our plant locations, certainly in very remote areas, but headquarters in St. Paul, Minneapolis, there is definitely a war on talent. And we see this as an opportunity for us to hire from people outside of St. Paul, Minneapolis. And we've done that over the last year, where we brought in people that are legal professionals that are located in Florida, in Boston. It doesn't matter so much where you work anymore, which I think is a great shift for us. I don't think we ever would have gotten there had we not had all been forced to work remote.
Fantastic. We're very lucky. We're in a great situation. It seems like a company values their people. And like you said, there is top talent in that area, and unlike other situations, barriers are not the same. And so therefore it's easy for both leadership to put that message out there, as well as, people leaders to support it.
Yep, absolutely. And I think that's definitely strongly encouraged. Senior level leaders in the company model that behavior. It's, if I look at it within our legal organization, I'm in the legal ops group. Our VP of legal operations will most likely be full-time remote. I'm opting to be full-time remote. I've got 12 direct reports that are going to be all over the place, some remote, some hybrid. So really modeling that choice, and it's what works for you.
Yeah, that's important about modeling that. Even in those companies that are hybrid, how many of you would say, you can post it in the chat, are you seeing your senior leaders or your GC actually modeling that behavior as well? So are you seeing more of a do as I do or do as I say philosophy too? Because I do think, to Heather's point, there is some generational differences as well in certain companies and maybe around certain leaders. So I know that I started seeing that it's okay, this is what we believe in. However, necessarily it's not what you see amongst the senior leaders, and nor do you in some cases actually feel like there is the same reward model or performance management model in all those instances. People are concerned that their careers might be held back as a result, possibly, or they may not be able to advance a position, or if there are, a new opportunity in which there could be a promotional move for someone, would the remote candidate have as much qualification as the on-site candidate? So it'd be interesting to see if anyone would like to chime in on that and speak to how they're seeing that amongst their leaders, or posting it to the chat too. So, and we'll circle back to it if you want to give that some thought.
Yeah.
Sorry, Andrew.
I was going to say, one question in the chat just before we get to that. This is really sort of, the mechanics of, like day to day. The vaccine mandate requirements. How does that look in your various companies? Are you required to disclose? Can you share if you are required to disclose vaccine requirements, or are you required to wear a mask if you're going back to the office? What does that look like?
So at PTC, being a therapeutics, a pharmaceutical company, we do, sorry about my dog, we do require vaccine for all new employees and current employees. So if you do apply at PTC Therapeutics, that's one of the questions that they'll ask you, if you are vaccinated, before they allow anyone to even go through the recruitment and the hiring process. As far as senior leaders, yes, we do have our senior leaders now working remotely. I realized a lot of EC members over the past 2 years, our executive committee members, have actually moved out of New Jersey. So everyone's remote now. Other than research, who only spent approximately 1 month out of the office, we reopened our offices in July of 2021. And, it was a hoteling type of thing. And I went in a few times, maybe twice a week. I might have seen 10 people at most on the campus. Wow. So, yeah, a lot of building space, 4 or 5 different buildings on the campus, and to only see 10 people when you go on campus. And as far as productivity, our attorneys are just as productive as they, if not more so, because the company is now more productive. It seems no one sleeps. No one knows the work-life balance now that they're working from home. People I used to see leave the office at 4 p.m. and not hear from them until 8 a.m. the next day. I'm getting emails at 10 p.m. from. So,
Wow.
you know, it's a different dynamic, certainly. But unfortunately for operations, some of my staff, you know, they weren't able to function from home. And they just didn't make the cut because not everyone is able to be as productive when you're forced to work from home rather than in the office. And that was a sad situation for the company because I feel like we lost some good candidates there. But what we're seeing recently, as we have grown in the past, we've doubled in size at the company in the past 3 years. So we didn't stop hiring during the pandemic. Most people want to work remotely. No one wants to come into the office. And I've interviewed people and I've asked them, you know, this is a contract position. Why are you looking to leave your employer? Oh, they're forcing us to come back to the office. I don't want to go back into the office. I prefer to work remotely.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
that is an interesting observation. I think the view of the workers versus the view of leadership, because they've had leadership to really talk about you know, what's happening with their companies and what are the things that they'd like to preserve. And one of the things is, you know, just culture, giving people the ability to collaborate, relationship building, those types of things, which actually feel like, you know, those are lost in a remote environment. However, the feedback from the workers is really about, you know, a large portion of those want to really work remotely. So the two are somewhat in conflict. And that's where, you know, sort of the values of the company, what the culture looks like as far as the future of work becomes a much more interesting conversation. Like, what does that really look like? And in addition, one thing that I did find just in some of the research that I did on this topic, and it's just sort of interesting to kind of tease that out, sort of what the future looks like. On the one hand, you do have employees who really do like the idea of working from home. What leaders are challenged with is making the in-office experience much more attractive than working from home. And how might you do that? Which is some of the challenges that they're facing right now. But thanks for that feedback. Just
So
before
I
we,
think-
yeah, go on.
No, please.
No, I was just going to comment on. There's right. So we aren't boxed into any topic. The conversation will go wherever the conversation goes. But because so many people responded just about the masks and vaccines requirements, there is a mix, but it looks like there's a pattern. More recently that the mask requirement, even the vaccine requirements, are a little less stringent than say before. But a number of the companies do still require them. I know for us, we are required to be vaccinated, and I saw one of the responses: if you're not vaccinated, there were some exceptions, like based on religious circumstances, or there are other health requirements that might prevent people from getting the vaccine. In those cases, those people are asked to work from home. But we submitted our vaccine status twice. We submitted it once, and now they want to make sure that we actually got boosters. So they ask us to do it again, and we're in the process of going back into the office. 3 waves, starting with leadership first. That was at the beginning of this month. People managers second, which is on the 15th, and everyone else at the end of the month. I'm sorry, Dina, go ahead.
No, I was just I'm looking at some of the questions too, because we are going to get there. We're really going to be soliciting suggestions for topics from you guys here shortly, because we do truly believe that not just all enterprise work, but legal work specifically in the legal operations space is changing as a result of this culture shift. But just out of curiosity, as some folks might want to ask. So So Jenny, interesting point you made around unvaccinated employees are asked to work remotely. Do you think this at all potentially can be viewed as favoritism towards those employees and having that flexibility as a result of the choice that they've made? Because I know, for example, in our company, we do not have a vaccine mandate. We are asked to share and upload our cards. However, we do have a test to stay policy as well, where, you know, if you continue coming to the office, you have to test on a regular basis. So I do find it fascinating when I hear some companies says, okay, well, for those that aren't vaccinated, we're not allowing them on site. How is that amongst some folks?
It's interesting because I think you mentioned generational, and it's funny because some of the more seasoned employees, I'll say, in the legal department would prefer to just stay home. Some are not interested in even going there. So we have that. But then we've always had a work flex program. So thankfully, we had a work flex program. Thankfully, we got teams in 2018, 19. So we had the mechanisms in place to work remotely with little difficulty and with little kind of like shock, like, oh my gosh, because some people were able to work in a work flex arrangement a couple days a week at home already for years, long time. But I think some of the individuals who are home and don't want to come in, it's a varied arrangement. If they've got, say, small children that they need my manager is in another state. I'd like to just work from home, and it's been working fantastically for a couple of years now. So we have just a crazy mix of things that are going on. All being said, our legal leadership isn't saying you will be hybrid or you will be coming in. The company is saying we are not a remote company. So there is that kind of background push to say we want to be in the offices in a hybrid mode. We want people to start to get together. And I think some of the communication probably will start to shift like next week and the week after, because I think the week of the 14th, we're actually kind of being asked to like really get that hybrid thing going. If you're going to do it, because the numbers are down, they're probably going to lift the mask mandate. So it's a little different. Our company it's like quietly saying we are a hybrid company. So come on back in, but yet nobody's saying you must come in, not yet.
And I think that's the type of things that you're going to be seeing around, cultural behavior changes that might, and even as Andre said, to make it more attractive.
Mm-hmm.
It could range from a cup of coffee towards you just have a lot more options in terms of collaborations, which then can further careers and all of those things that people feel like they're going to be a little bit of FOMO happening, and people are going to feel like they're a little bit missing out. It's a phenomenal social experiment.
It really is. And and then we've had kind of that natural attrition happening as well. I'm sure every company has. So you're seeing this kind of like ebb and flow of new faces and old ones saying, I'm going to do something else. And it partly because it's where they are in their own life, but it's coincidental because it's just now, think if it wasn't at post-pandemic or near the end of what we call the pandemic, might be viewed differently, but now it seemed like people are just going, I don't want to do this anymore. And they just move along.
Yeah, the next industrial revolution, for sure.
Fair enough.
So for those of you that are, trying to ration in your mind what is kind of happening and hearing some of the different perspectives, please, for those, I'm sure I'm speaking for those that have shared some of their philosophies, from Stephanie to Krissa to Jenny, maybe perhaps they're open to hearing from you. And if you want to ask some questions, if you are trying to maybe perhaps have a different, more of an open mindset in your company, I'm talking to companies like you, Heather, on that. And then I will also post in the chat the article that seemed to be quite powerful that came out recently in Inc. Related to Google's philosophy on this. They seem to be a trendsetter in this. And, it seems like they are more focused on purposeful return to the office, but I also think that they're making some changes, and this kind of ties into our ways that we work on. They're tying it into more around the times in which you are in the office. They are purposeful, intended for collaboration, intended for more of innovation sessions and things that people are doing that are togetherness. but then also changing in terms of what's required and what's demanded of people when they're at home as well. Intentionally not scheduling meetings on those days, considering that those are work days, these are the work days. And so I'm going to really focus on making sure that my meetings with my teams are on those days that we've decided to purposely all come in together, because nobody wants to be sitting in their office and just on a Zoom call with someone else. But then, maybe perhaps even sparing the days in which they are working from home to be more of, okay, I don't have as much of a meeting agenda going on that day, and I'm going to get heads down so that I'm good with coming into the office and I'm not feeling like I'm going to miss out on work. So I'll post that article. Could be of interest to folks on this call.
Absolutely. Here, one comment in the chat about hybrid legal departments, and it's really about physical space. Hoteling arrangements, individual offices, are they the same or have they changed? What are people's experiences there that they can share?
I can answer that for our company. They left the legal department alone, so I get to go back to my own space. Everywhere else is all hoteling and find your spot and see if your friends are sitting somewhere, you can go sit with them. But they left the legal department alone, and rightly so, because again, we have those seasoned employees who feel, I want to sit where I used to sit. I don't want to go in and try to find a spot to collaborate with people. We're all collaborating together. So why can't we just keep our names on our cubes? So that's how they did it. I'm not saying that too loud. I don't want anyone to change it.
Yeah, we're definitely
Same for
creatures
us.
of habit. Yeah. So go in, you're like, who moved my cheese? So in May, I think around in 2019, I joined Chick-fil-A a little bit over 3 years ago. And when I joined, they were already converting to they called it, what did they call it? Because it wasn't remote, because it was like remote. What is that? Campus mobile. That's what it was. Campus mobile. Because if anyone knows anything about the campus, I don't know how many dozens of acres it is. It's just like huge at Buffington Road. So if anyone's ever in Atlanta, happy to show you around. But they were going campus mobile, and because we have all these different buildings, and we had shuttle buses that'll take you to the different buildings. So the first to go were the offices, and I came on after that happened, after they converted the main building to non-offices. And I heard that was challenging for our attorneys, and even some of the paralegals, I think, had offices. And then what they called the support staff, so legal operations, who I serve in, they had what they called more of a station or a resident space. And because we weren't working remote, there was, if you needed to personally work from home for a reason to like maybe go to a doctor's office or to leave early for travel, like, yes, you could do it then. But we were, because of our culture, we were in the office. This should be the first place you want to work, you hear the Cathys say. And I'm like, it is the first place I want to work, but I need to leave early on Friday, which they'd be fine with. But my point is that we had support staff, so legal ops, some of the paralegals had resident spaces. And this is across Chick-fil-A, some other people had resident spaces. So they had, while it's an open area, they have like a little bit of a divider, so not cubicles, and you would have your name on it. So you could leave out your, which you probably can't see it, but you could leave out your big old keyboard I have here, and then, my nice ergonomic mouse and a Bluetooth headset, things like that. So prior to us coming back to campus, after the shutdown, so we just started back in February, they did away with all resident spaces, meaning like no assigned spaces. And I'll be candid, I was like, wait, what? I was like, implementing this ecosystem of technology. And if people I'm like, I need my whiteboards. I didn't need paper. I'm like, I'm technology. I don't need paper, but I need, I have no less than 3 laptops and a keyboard and a mouse. Like I have technology sitting on my desk because I'm helping people, and so I'm like, how's that going to work? Like I can't even leave my keyboard out. So it's been a little challenging, but for the most part, we had these pods of people. So like legal had home base 29, enterprise analytics was over in 28. People are still migrating to their former spaces. But then you'll have visitors occasionally, and you can tell like someone sitting over there in legal. We're like, who's that? And it still says legal. So for me personally, it's challenging because I like to feel like I have a home to come to leave out my monitors, to leave out my keyboard and my mouse. But the leadership thought it was best that we all go to this campus mobile type environment. And we truly are. So my workstation, quotes, is my home base. So at home, where I'm at home. So I have my larger monitor, I have my keyboard and my mouse, and I save the time where I go into the office for the collaboration meetings, the cornerstones. And if we do an innovation session, I'm already in the innovation space anyway with whiteboards. So I haven't really, I think a couple of my other peers were also wondering how that's going to work out, whether they've been here 2 months or 20 years. There are a lot of people that were, had a challenge moving to iManage Cloud and going away from paper, but it saved us when we went, because we had just gone live in May of 2019 and then shut down in March. So that had been a real saver for us. And so I think they're okay not having paper now. I think now it's just, it's your stuff, I was like, where can I put, like, where are my snacks? I mean, Chick-fil-A feeds you, don't get me wrong, but like, I don't know, your little first aid kit, or like, oh, where am I gonna put my hairbrush? Or something like that. You have to carry all that around. I'm sure Andre doesn't have that hairbrush problem, but something like that. But yeah, so but Chick-fil-A, we truly are just thankful to be back, and we know the operators never left, and so their spaces, and so we're just happy to support them in any way we can. And I do believe the cornerstones are already working, because as a team on the legal ops team, we have, it's predictability. It's like, here's the 1 day a month, the entire team is together. Here are the 2 days a month that the sub teams are together. And we probably are going to advertise that a little bit. Like if anyone, wants to know that. You have some, because we have childcare on site that's subsidized. There are plenty of parents who are still coming to the office 5 days a week because they have their kids up at the Jeanette Cathy Center. So happy to answer any other questions too, Dina. I know you mentioned earlier if anybody's open.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Happy to answer what I can.
We're going to be writing white papers for years to come on this too.
That's right.
Some of us are better examples than others, so that's good. Sounds like Mike's got 100% hotel. Was that, Mike, something you guys were doing in the work stuff beforehand, or did this kind of push you to do it?
Yeah, it's been my first exposure coming from years in financial services and manufacturing, where offices and cubicles were the way of the world. So as a high-tech company, we've apparently never had offices. Everybody, you sit down where you want to sit. There's a giant monitor to plug into, and they give you all the power and connectivity you want. And then you have a locker. So if you need to lock up a keyboard or something you want to leave behind, that's available, but nobody gets an assigned spot. Even executives, although they are known to camp out in conference rooms from time to time.
Interesting. Yeah, but it seems like the majority of folks that chimed in saying that it's kind of that number. If it's less than 3 days or 3 days and less, then you likely forfeit your space. But if it's more than that, you get to keep it.
Yeah, and that forfeiture sounds like an incentive to keep people in the office, is how I interpreted it when I read it.
Do it that way for sure. For sure. Yeah, I don't know what I would have done when they had us back in last June, and I would have lost my space. So.
Sure.
Revolt.
Okay, let's talk about.
Yeah.
No, please go ahead.
Well, and so Andre and I had, stepping back on this a year ago, let's step back even further than that. 2 years ago, we held our March meeting in a very similar topic, which I wish now looking back on it, we could have recorded and heard some of our responses of what we were anticipating. I left my plant here thinking I was only going to be gone for 2 weeks. So certainly a lot has changed in the 2 years that we had this topic. And at that point, we really wanted to gather feedback from the group around how you thought that the nature of legal work temporarily was going to have to change as a result of this. Like Stephanie said, the implementation of document management solutions, iManage, and other electronic tools. How are you going to handle letter subpoenas or mail subpoenas, things like that? We had really good dialogues and talk about that. And again, we all were of the mindset that these would be temporary solutions and things that we would not have to do, but maybe some might kind of stick with us for a while, and they have. And here we are 2 years later, last year, we wanted to go on the theme of helping and giving you and bringing you all topics that would give you resources, give you tools, give you ideas and inspirations of how we can work in this type of hybrid world, again, with the anticipation of returning back. So we were hoping that this particular meeting we would be doing in person with you in preparation for the ACC conference. I know myself personally, and I probably speak for Andre as well as many others, we're hoping we'd be gathered together here in Chicago next month, talking about, what we've covered and giving a recap of the last year and then soliciting your ideas for new topics. But the world has changed, and here we are. Unfortunately, ACC Legal Ops was canceled this year. Exchange did not occur. Looking to bring it back to us next year. Hopefully, we'll be hearing more from that from our ACC partners. But nonetheless, we are very proud to have continued on with the ACC PPKM-IG. I know Andre and I are very proud to have brought you several different topics. I've been honored to serve as co-chair here for the last 2 years. I'm in the process of transitioning. Here's my shameless plug. We are still looking for a co-chair to take my spot as Andre takes lead co-chair for the next year or so. So please feel free to reach out to either of us if you're interested in that. It's a very fulfilling role. I've had a lot of great opportunities and meeting wonderful people, learning some very interesting topics. But we are wanting to spend the last couple of minutes here getting some ideas around topics. So Andre, I'm going to turn it over to you to think of a mechanism of doing that, and maybe perhaps we just kind of open it up to the floor. But we want to know what you liked about what we've shared over the last year and what else we could bring you to further your knowledge and your expertise in those areas, and what things are kind of new that you want us to bring to you as well.
Yeah, and thank you for that. And it's a sad moment to think about Dina going on to the next phase. But yes, we do need participation. I will say for me, I was just reminiscing a little bit when you talked about that very first session. I think that's when I actually really got engaged with ACC Legal Ops, and it was because of the pandemic that I started to attend so many of the meetings. When you guys asked me if I wanted to participate as a co-chair, you needed one at the time. The answer was yes. It was yes, there's a big benefit in terms of the topics, the people that you meet, and so on and so forth. What I also think is if you are a wealth of knowledge, in a very specific topic, the things that you've learned, it is really a big give back to such a large community to be able to share your own experiences, and through networking, bring more information to encourage and educate the people who are at various phases in their legal operations journey. A lot of the legal ops participants that join are very early in their progression, so they can learn a lot from this. So to the degree that you think about whether or not you can participate, the time commitment, which was one of the first things I thought of. Well, I really have time to do it. It actually doesn't take as much time as you may expect. That was my largest concern. Dina and I, in terms of planning, obviously there's the time commitment to attend these sessions, which you're already doing because you're here, right? And then we set up maybe a week, like after this, we'll just meet for an hour, do, some planning. What are the topics that we want to present? We will have a pre-meeting, maybe a half an hour, depending. So, maybe 2-3 hours a month max. We do this a very efficient process, make sure we stay on point. Probably just all of the planning in the very beginning to make sure we have the topics all laid out is probably the largest of the commitment. But just a few hours a month is what we're really asking, and to know just how much you'll learn in this experience, and to know how much you'll be able to give back and share with the rest of the legal ops community. We look forward to hearing from you. You can either email Dina, myself, KJ. Just let us know if you are interested in participating. And we'll take volunteers now too, if you know that's something you want to do.
I like the way you put that, Andre. I was very honored to have been approached for the idea of serving as co-chair. And you're right, it's a way of paying forward. I was very lucky to have met some of the prior co-chairs that helped me along my early journey when I joined legal operations for my IT back in 2018 now. Yeah. They took me on in their mentorship roles, and I felt like it was a good way to give back what I've learned. And then like you said, add in some additional experiences that are outside of this particular discipline, like my project management and my Scrum Master experience in this particular role. So if you kind of come into that scenario, if you fall into that scenario, this is a perfect opportunity for you. You're not going to be out of it alone. You don't have to be an expert in legal operations. You didn't have to serve the last 25 years in the role. Believe me that we're going to benefit from what you have to offer. So please volunteer if you'd like. I'm going to post in the chat my email address as well as Andre's email address, and then finally KJ's as well if you'd like to reach out to ACC specifically.
Okay.
So Andre, what topics do you think the folks are going to want? We're going to do a quick brainstorm here for like 2 minutes. It'll be a silent moment, and which will be awkward, but just to give you guys a recap, we had a special session on project management. You'll learn about waterfall methodology and in-depth Scrum methodology approach. We had a lot of time spent on knowledge management earlier this year. We had presentations from Oracle on their internal knowledge management portal, but then we also had people share their experiences in using SharePoint for knowledge management and legal functions. We had our change management topic. We had our vendor in last month. That was a great idea. What else, Andre? What are some of the things that we talked about this year that could inspire some folks for some topics?
Things like certifications was one topic. There is somewhat of a, how shall I say, a spillover in, with technology, conversations about automation, robotics process automation, workflow, artificial intelligence, those types of things, which are great conversations. It's definitely technology, but there is a process impact.
Yeah, we did some collaboration sessions with the tools and tech team as well. I think we even did one with maybe one of the other resource groups too. But yes, if there are some folks that have some suggestions and ideas of collaborations for further those topics, please. All right, so shall we go for it? Let's give everybody maybe
and the maturity model. Yep.
Good. So please keep them coming. Andre and I are taking feverishly notes here.
Yeah. Enter into the chat things you would like to learn more about or hear again.
What can we bring you topics on?
Yep.
All right, I'm starting the clock. Ears. Good. Management. Oh, org structures. That's good.
Knowledge management looks pretty popular there.
Admittedly, we feel like we may have failed you in bringing you some topics on some of the tech side, like AI or bots. For 2 years in a row, we had to skip those topics. We really didn't have a lot of expertise in that, very honestly. I feel like that was something that people wanted to learn something about and thought of the potential. But I know in that knowledge management topic, we were going to try to take it to the next level with AI and bringing in legal ops bots or legal bots that could answer some of your common legal questions, but we didn't get there. So maybe that's something we could try to see, Andre.
Sure.
Future of work, future of legal. These are great ideas. We appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you all. I think we've got a lot to work with. All right. Let's see. Bronco, do we still have you on?
Yep, I'm still here.
Do you have any quick closing comments or topics for the general community?
Not at the moment.
Okay. Well,
okay.
Thank you all. Again, it's been an honor to serve in this role. I have taken quite a bit from it, and I hope that I've left you with a little bit more knowledge. I was very lucky to have 2 great co-chairs when I was part of the organization. So I'm going to still be on these calls, so I'm not going anywhere. I'm excited to remain part of this interest group. I hope I get to see all of you in person, perhaps next year. And thank you for all of your contributions and all your thought leadership in this area.
All right, and thank you, Dina.
Thank you, Andre. Been a great partner.
Here, here. You being a great partner. All right. All right. Well, thanks, everybody.
Take care all.
Take care.
Bye-bye. Thanks, Tina.
Bye, everyone.